Let's talk some Ohio State recruiting. We got some big commitments coming up. None bigger than five-star linebacker Xavier Griffin. He's going to be announcing that decision June 29th. So we are 4 days away. Depends when you're watching this. We're recording this on a Wednesday. So let's bring in Mick Walker, Letterman Rowe, Xavier Griffin, one-time USC decommit. It sounded like it was all Alabama when he decommitted and went back on the market, but Ohio State and Texas have really made this interesting. How do you see it?
Yeah, obviously after his official visit earlier this month, there was a decent amount of buzz. I think Ohio State had kind of made a lasting impression on him. And then obviously he goes to Texas and he goes to Alabama, and that changes how they are viewed in his recruitment. I still think Ohio State's pressing, but I think they came into the summer with the idea that they need a really highly ranked edge. And they would also like to get a highly ranked linebacker, and just finance wise, budget wise, you realize, oh, we probably need to go in on the edge. And that leaves a guy like Carter Meadows, who we'll talk about at a later date. But I think that's kind of where they've turned their attention to when it comes to five-star defenders.
All right, big news today. PJ Dean going to make his announcement on June 30th. It seems like Georgia's trending here, but I also think Ohio State has a legit shot at landing him.
Yeah, I think Steve Wilfong even put in an RPM earlier this spring for Ohio State to land. And it seemed like the Buckeyes were all trending after he made the decision to flip over to defensive line. And then he showed up on his official visit. And I just don't think things aligned after that visit. He showed up a little bit underweight, I believe, was the kind of concern. And then I believe Ohio State wanted him as an interior defensive lineman. He looks probably more like an edge based on the graphics and the photos that came out from his official visit. And that's when you kind of seems like Georgia and South Carolina are more favoring towards taking him when it comes to just playing the edge. So that's kind of where I lean on that recruitment, just not Ohio State at this point, just because I think they wanted him more as a defensive tackle than an edge.
Yeah, and this one has gone back and forth, so there's still a few days left before Dean makes that announcement. We'll see what happens. Let's rewind. Let's go to June 28th, where we got defensive lineman Cameron Brickle. He's out of IMG Academy down there in Bradenton, Florida. He's going to make a decision. It's going to be either FSU, Maryland, or Ohio State. At some points, we were wondering how hard is Ohio State really pushing here. But as we get closer and closer to this decision date, it seems like the Buckeyes are heavily involved.
Yeah, they got him on campus this spring. They really loved him then when they got him. I know Cam's dealt with some injuries and some different setbacks being a bigger guy throughout his high school career. When he was at Philly, now he's down at IMG, and it seems like he's gotten himself under control. Ohio State's been a constant in that recruitment, pushing for him with Larry Johnson. I know Mark Bantoni, Ryan Day, all those guys have kind of signed off. So as we get close to this June 28th date, I think Ohio State is well positioned to get Brickle in this class, so long as, an FSU or a Maryland don't blow him away with just a ginormous offer. I think Ohio State would love to have him in the class, though, to pair with a guy like maybe a Demar Simon, who's going to announce in this coming week as well, and a Jameer Perez, who they're trying to flip from Florida. They'd love to kind of get that trio as their defensive tackle class this cycle.
Yeah, speaking of Demar Simon, he's going to come off the board a day earlier on June 27th. I mean, this Ohio State D-line class really has a shot to kind of come together this week.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, the four finalists for Demar Simon are Texas, Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State. I think Texas is taking just about every defensive lineman they can get from the South or even out West. So I think they've turned their focus to other targets. Michigan seems to be locked in on Titan Davis, who they got in the class earlier, and they have some other guys that are kind of in mind. So then that leaves Penn State and Ohio State for Demar Simon. I think he's somebody that Ryan Day, especially as the head coach, has kind of had a fascination with for a while when it comes to the defensive line. They had him on campus last weekend for an official visit. They got the last one. I think they feel confident that obviously as this recruitment gets closer and they have to start talking dollars and cents, they can top whatever Penn State would put on the table and get another talented defensive lineman in this class.
Yeah. Now let's switch over to the offensive side of the ball, because we couldn't do an Ohio State segment without talking Felix Ojo. He's been at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge this week with Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons on the ground there. And there's just a lot of buzz around his recruitment, and it involves two teams, Texas and Ohio State. So where do you lean on this one as it stands right now for Felix Ojo?
Yeah, I was honestly surprised when Felix was so forthright about, hey, it's Ohio State and Texas still, because I thought Michigan had made a good impression on him this summer. I thought they were going to come correct with a high NIL amount when it comes to the deal that they were going to offer him. But obviously it seems like Ohio State and Texas have separated from themselves, and feel like that's what Felix told Steve and Chad there in Indianapolis. So I think when you look at that, Ohio State was going to commit a lot of money if they could stay into getting into the Jackson Cantwell recruitment. They did not end up staying in that recruitment and focused all on Felix Ojo. Now it's just about, can they keep up with what Texas might be willing to offer, especially when you look at Texas wants John Turrentine and they want Malachi Lee. Is there a room for Ohio State to kind of sneak in and steal Felix Ojo? with a good offer if the Longhorns start looking at other guys. I don't know if that's the case because it feels like Felix Ojo is the top on the board for both Ohio State and Texas, but he's certainly someone Ohio State would love to get in the class, even though it doesn't seem very likely at this moment unless Texas kind of screws this up.
What do you think, Buckeye fans? Talk to Mick and I. Do you think Felix Ojo will be a Buckeye when it's all said and done? How about Xavier Griffin, Carter Meadows? It could be a 5-star summer for the Buckeyes. Talk to us. Comment section below.